aircraft dangling off a muddy cliff just feet from the Black Sea. 162 passengers and 6 crew members were on board that jet. Everyone made it off safely. Investigators say it was raining at the time and the plane had trouble slowing down, but they're still looking into exactly what caused it to overshoot the runway and almost wind up in the sea. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas lashing out at the Trump administration, calling its Mideast peace plan a, quote, slap in the face, and vowing to, quote, slap back. Abbas making the remarks during a meeting of the Palestinian Central Council. Connor Powell has more on this from Jerusalem.
Rick, as the Trump administration threatens to cut financial aid to the Palestinians, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is speaking out tonight in a fiery speech, calling President Trump's Middle East peace plan a slap in the face, adding that the Palestinians will, quote, slap back. This just the latest in growing tensions between Palestinians and the White House following President Trump's unilateral decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The move upending decades of international efforts to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through a negotiated settlement. President Trump recently tweeted his frustrations with the lack of progress to restart talks, and his administration appears set to dramatically cut U.S. aid to the organizations who help Palestinian refugees. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has publicly lobbied for Washington to cut funds to the Palestinians. But other officials, particularly in the Israeli security services, fear eliminating or sharply reducing U.S. financial assistance might put pressure on neighboring Jordan, a key U.S. ally which has a significant Palestinian population. Or even worse, a cut in aid could initiate the collapse of the Palestinian government, with whom Israeli security services cooperate with and rely on to combat Palestinian militants. Abbas ended his speech tonight saying he remained committed to peace, but that any agreement must be negotiated and not forced on the Palestinian people. Rick?
Connor Powell from Jerusalem. Connor, thank you. We believe that we have the president speaking right now. Let's listen.
Took responsibility. They made a mistake.
What will you do to make sure that What will you do to make sure something like that?
Well, we hope it won't happen again, but part of it is that people are on edge, but maybe eventually we'll solve the problem so they won't have to be so on edge.
Have you communicated with Kim Jong-un to clear the comments?
Well, we'll see what happens. Scheduled, a couple of additional meetings scheduled. We're going to see what happens. Hopefully it's all going to work out. We will see.
Have you talked directly to him about it?
Well, the Wall Street Journal, as you know, quoted totally wrong. But we're going to see what happens with North Korea. We have great talks going on. The Olympics you know about. A lot of things can happen.
Do you have a responsibility to make a deal on DACA? Is it your responsibility, Mr. President?
Oh, we're ready, willing, and able to make a deal on DACA. Make a deal. And the folks from DACA should know the Democrats are the ones that aren't going to make a deal. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
So it appears to be a working weekend for the president down at the Winter White House. He was there with the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, apparently going into some sort of meeting at the Trump International Golf Club there. And we'll bring you more when we get it. Meanwhile, crews responding to a bizarre scene out west where they found a flaming car hanging out of a second-story window. How did this happen? Plus, Greyhound passengers taken on a terrifying ride that prompts a high-speed police chase. We hear from those on board as we get disturbing new details about the suspect who's now in custody.
We received a 911 call from a passenger on a Greyhound bus that was southbound in Milwaukee County on I-94. The individual indicated there was a person on the bus who was making threatening statements and, in fact, threatened to shoot and kill.
Get ready. As the train approached. No one was injured aboard the train, but service was suspended as police investigate the crash. The train was headed from New York City to Savannah, Georgia. And a Greyhound bus ride turns into a potential hostage situation and a police chase. And now one of the passengers is under arrest for allegedly threatening other riders on the Greyhound rolling from Chicago to Milwaukee. The incident sparked a police pursuit that ended in northern Illinois. Officers throwing down spike strips to blow out the bus's tires. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Authorities later said the suspect is an illegal immigrant.
Mr. Vargas Rosas, the 33-year-old, has been in our country illegally and, in fact, was deported some time ago back to Mexico. And by virtue of his actions last night, you see he's back and threatening to kill Americans.
Brian Yennis has more on this from our New York City newsroom.
Rick, the suspect, Margarito Vargas Rosas, appeared in an Illinois court this morning where a county judge denied him bond. Vargas Rosas was arrested Friday night and charged with making terroristic threats a felony and disorderly conduct on a Greyhound bus traveling from Milwaukee to Chicago with nearly 40 people on board. The sheriff says Vargas Rosas is in the United States illegally from Mexico. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol tells Fox News the 33-year-old suspect had been deported 5 times before. 5. He previously has been arrested for a DUI. At around 9:40 p.m., passengers on the Greyhound bus began calling police, saying the suspect was pacing back and forth in the aisle, threatening to kill people, and appeared to draw what passengers thought was a gun.
He was just acting crazy. I don't know if he just wasn't, if he was intoxicated or what he was, but he just started making threats to everybody. And it almost felt like a terrorist situation because you're on a bus, and a guy saying he's got a gun.
Police chased the bus before forcefully stopping it on Interstate 94 in Illinois, using spike strips to flatten the tires because the bus driver would not pull over. Passengers say they could not understand why the driver refused to stop.
He thought that our deputies were trying to stop someone else. I know it sounds rather hard to wrap our mind around. How do you not know you're being pulled over? I think he ultimately recognized that this was a serious event when we spiked his tires. His tires became flat, at least 2 of them did, and he rolled into the state of Illinois where he finally came to arrest. But he had no idea what was happening in the very far back of the bus.
Unbelievable. Police say Vargas Rosas implied he had a gun, but no gun was found. None of the nearly 40 passengers were injured. Rick?
That is a strange story. Brian Yennis reporting here in New York City. Dramatic video out of Southern California, a car smashing into the 2nd story of a dentist's office. And there it is. It happened early this morning. Authorities say the car was carrying 2 people when it swerved across several lanes of traffic, hit a divider, and went airborne. Crews had to rescue 1 person from the flaming car while the other managed to get out unassisted. Both of them suffered minor injuries. No word yet if drugs or alcohol were involved. President Trump tweeting earlier his frustration, saying hopes for a deal on DACA is now likely, quote, dead. But he just talked about it moments ago. So did the president raise the stakes with the government shutdown looming, or is this a negotiating tactic? Also, lawmakers weighing in on Hawaii's false ballistic missile alert. Could this fiasco actually be a blessing in disguise when it comes to national defense?
We have to have a robust missile defense system, and that's why it's so important that we pass a government funding bill that funds missile defense systems. The simple fact of the matter is, once a missile gets close to its target, there's a limited number of options that we have.
Depend Real Fit briefs feature breathable cotton-like fabric.
And Congress attempting to reach an agreement on immigration reform as part of a spending bill that must pass by Friday to avoid a government shutdown. But the president doesn't appear too optimistic that they'll get this done. He tweeted earlier, quote, DACA is probably dead because the Democrats don't really want it. They just want to talk and take desperately needed money away from our military. I, as president, want people coming into our country who are going to help us become strong and great again. People coming in through a system based on merit. No more lotteries. America first. Despite the current impasse, at least 1 Democrat remains hopeful they'll strike a deal.
I'm encouraged. First of all, we have a bipartisan recommendation, a bipartisan legislation that's been worked out after they sat down last week with the president, and it seems to do everything that was asked of them. I would be very, very encouraged that hopefully all my colleagues are going to look at this in a very positive way. And if the president said what he said, as far as you give me something in a bipartisan way, something you work out and I'll sign it. We hope to get that done and move on. But this is all the hyper that's going on around it is unbelievable to me.
So Senator Manchin says he's encouraged. How about Morgan Chalfant, reporter for The Hill? Morgan, before we get to your reaction to all this, we do want to play back the president's comments just moments ago at the International Golf Club down in West Palm Beach. Here's President Trump, and then we'll get your reaction.
got a lot of things. There are a lot of things to talk about. We'll be talking about DACA also. Well, I don't think honestly, I don't think the Democrats want to make a deal. I think they talk about DACA, but they don't want to help the DACA people. Now, we used to say the DACA children, but the children aren't children. Well, what's the sticking point? I think you have a lot of sticking points, but they're all Democrat sticking points. Because we are ready, willing, and able to make a deal, but they don't want to. They don't want security at the border. We have people pouring in. They don't want security at the border. They don't want to stop drugs. And they want to take money away from our military, which we cannot do. So those are some of the sticking points. Your comments the other day made it harder? Did you see what various senators in the room said about my comments? They were made. No, I'm not a racist. I am the least racist person you have ever interviewed. That I can tell you.
Are you going to make a deal, Mr. President?
I don't know if there'll be a shutdown. There shouldn't be, because if there is, our military gets hurt very badly. We cannot let our military be hurt. Well, that was a state thing, but we're going to now get involved with them. I love that they took responsibility. They took total responsibility, but we're going to get involved. Their attitude and what they want to do, I think it's terrific. They took responsibility. They made a mistake.
Well, we have to make more than that.
Say it?
What will you do to make sure something like that?
Well, we hope it won't happen again, but part of it is that people are on edge, but maybe eventually we'll solve the problem so they won't have to be so on edge.
Have you communicated with Kim Jong-un to make clear of your comments?
Well, we'll see what happens. They have a couple of meetings scheduled, a couple of additional meetings scheduled. We're going to see what happens. Hopefully it's all going to work out. We will see.
Have you talked directly to him, Mr. President?
Well, the Wall Street Journal, as you know, quoted totally wrong. But we're going to see what happens with North Korea. We have great talks going on. The Olympics you know about. A lot of things can happen.
Do you have a responsibility to make a deal on DACA? Is it your responsibility, Mr. President?
Oh, we're ready, willing, and able to make a deal on DACA, but I don't think the Democrats want to make a deal. And the folks from DACA should know the Democrats are the ones that aren't going to make a deal. Okay? Thank you, everybody. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
I know there's a lot there, Morgan. Let's just go back to DACA. It looked like they might be close to a deal earlier this week, and now they seem pretty far apart.
Right, Rick, as you heard there, that was the president doubling down on those tweets that he sent out this morning, saying that Democrats don't want to make a deal. It certainly seems like those comments show that a bipartisan deal on DACA is all the more unlikely, especially ahead of this crucial government shutdown deadline. Of course, the president there really emphasizing that Democrats are to blame if a deal isn't reached, which of course is his effort to then in turn, if the government is shut down, pin the blame on Democrats there. So certainly doesn't seem like they're anywhere closer to a bipartisan deal despite any progress that was made last week.
Well, some of that progress involved an agreement by this bipartisan group of senators to include $1.6 billion for the border wall. And then what happened?
Well, it was all thrown into disarray last Friday when these reports came out about alleged comments that Trump made during the meeting on DACA with bipartisan lawmakers. Obviously, that has really roiled the debate and dominated it over this, and it seems that Trump is kind of taking a hard line on Democrats now, especially because many of them have come out highly criticizing him for these comments that he is said to have made, disparaging Haiti and other African countries. So that's certainly thrown a wrench in things, and I think it's really influenced the debate at this point.
Is a government shutdown likely? What's the sense there in D.C.?
Well, there's always that threat. I think that, Republicans and Democrats both have reasons not to want to shut the government down. That's certainly it's certainly a political liability for either party, I think, at this point. The president also, even though he seeks to blame Democrats, could also have blame pinned on himself as well, because he's been drawing such a hard line on the things that he wants out of this DACA deal.
Yeah.
So I think that it's possible, but at this point, there are several days left until the government actually shuts down, and we do see Congress kind of scrambling at the last minute to get these issues resolved.
Well, one of the things that he's firm on wanting is curtailing chain migration, and it seems like Democrats are holding out on this.
Well, yeah, he certainly has multiple things that he's demanding. The funds for the border wall. Democrats are, not really giving him too much, and he doesn't seem to be willing to give them much either. So I think at this point it seems to be sort of a stalled. And of course, as I mentioned, the controversy surrounding that meeting on Friday really hasn't helped things. It's kind of furthered those partisan divides, and also Republicans have been critical of the president as well. So that certainly hasn't been very helpful for him.
Yeah, well, we heard from the Deputy White House Press Secretary Raj Shah on Fox News Sunday this morning, suggesting that the leaks from that meeting that you referred to about the comments that the president allegedly made could have spiked any hope for a resolution. And it really does seem like these two sides are now seriously butting heads and further apart than they could have been.
Right, and I believe Senator Rand Paul made similar observations today, and it's roiled the debate, as I mentioned. We've got some Republicans coming out and criticizing the president, Representative Mia Love, and then you have others that are defending him. So, it's not exactly clear what happened in that meeting, but what is clear is that it's certainly thrown the debate over DACA in quite a tizzy, and I think that it's going to continue to influence it and really dominate the conversation going forward in the next few days.
One other question on this topic, Morgan. Immigration officials are encouraging some 800,000 Dreamers in America to apply for renewals now before it's too late. Can you explain why that's happening?
Well, because the Trump administration plans to shut this down in March. And of course, if Congress doesn't agree on a deal to actually make this program law, it's going to expire.
Yeah. All right, Morgan, we're going to ask you to stay there for a minute, if you don't mind. We want to get your thoughts on another major story that's making waves in our nation's capital right now. Lawmakers demanding answers after that false ballistic missile alert that sent Hawaii into a panic on Saturday morning. The Trump administration saying it had nothing to do with this mistake, but that it's committed to preventing a repeat of that mistake. Ellison Barber is going to pick up this story from Washington. Ellison, the FCC is looking into this now. Why? And where does their investigation stand?
Right. Well, their investigation is still going on, but in a statement, Chairman Ajit Pai said that based on what they have seen so far, quote, it appears the government of Hawaii did not have reasonable safeguards or process controls in place to prevent the transmission of a false alert. Pai went on to say that moving forward, the investigation will focus on what steps need to be taken to ensure something like this doesn't happen again. The Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security said this on Fox News Sunday.
We're working with state and locals to ensure not only that the messaging is clear, but what to do next is clear as well. How we can best support them and work with them. As you know, they're on the first lines and they're the first responders. Unfortunate situation, but we're all working together to make sure it doesn't happen again.
The FCC and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say what happened in Hawaii, the false alarm, the time it took to correct it, is unacceptable, not only because of the panic it caused for so many people living there, but the potential harm it caused to the public's trust in that emergency alert system.
Yeah,
Rick?
And lawmakers none too pleased on this, Ellison.
Right. Yeah, they're saying all across the board that this cannot happen again. But Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard is saying that the focus actually needs to go beyond sirens.
And what makes me angry is, yes, that this false alarm went out and we have to fix that in Hawaii. But really, we've got to get to the underlying issue here of why are the people of Hawaii in this country facing a nuclear threat coming from North Korea today? And what is this president doing urgently to eliminate that threat?
And you heard just a minute ago the president saying that they were talking with North Korea. Sources tell Fox News the House was already planning actually to hold a hearing in early February to address emergency alert systems. Now sources say what happened in Hawaii will be part of the discussion. When asked if it's true that the Trump administration has not conducted a full-scale exercise for this type of event, DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen told Fox News Sunday that they operate under the National Response Framework and had an exercise in December with deputy secretaries of the department specifically related to this type of threat. She also said there were plans before the false alarm for a cabinet level exercise in February. Rick?
Ellison Barber in Washington on this remarkable story. Ellison, thank you. So let's bring back Morgan Chalfant, reporter from The Hill. Senator Cotton said today that what happened in Hawaii could be a game changer on missile defense.
Absolutely. I think that this is a very, illuminating issue, particularly because it really does shine the light on that threat from North Korea and what we need to do, to respond and to prepare. I think, it's not only about these state alert systems. It's also about missile defense. It's about, broader issues with regards to, tampering down tensions that have really seemed to escalate in recent weeks. So this contributes to the conversation that's been ongoing about the threat from North Korea and what the administration is really doing in terms of, countering that.
Yeah, this was a pretty remarkable mistake. Left nearly 1 million people terrified. We know that the House, and Nelson reported this, the House was planning a hearing next month to address emergency alert systems in general, and they certainly have more to talk about now.
Absolutely. I think that this is really going to trigger a lot of outrage. It really already has on Capitol Hill. Senator Brian Schatz and others representing the state coming out and, describing this as unacceptable and saying that we really need to, to shine a light on what went wrong and figure it out. Obviously, the FCC investigating now, and Schatz has said that he's going to work closely with the chairman there to support it. So I think we're really going to see, some questions on Capitol Hill regards to this and what the federal role is in this, because this was a state system, a state mistake.
Yeah, I got a call from a buddy in law enforcement on Saturday morning saying, do you know anybody in Hawaii? Because there's a ballistic missile inbound and it's going to hit in 8 minutes. So, I mean, the issues are huge, and they've got a lot to figure out.
Absolutely.
Morgan, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
A relentless winter rearing its ugly head again across much of the U.S., with plenty of Americans still digging out and doing their best to stay warm. A wide swath of the country is bracing for yet another Arctic blast. Plus, stunning video out of Florida as a boat transforms into this giant fireball with dozens of people on board. Details on this next. No reported injuries at this time, and a source tells Fox the smoke had dissipated by the time firefighters arrived on scene. We'll bring you updates if necessary. Also breaking, a casino boat erupts in flames just off of Florida's Gulf Coast. Local police in Pasco County, just north of Tampa, say this vessel caught fire just offshore with 50 people on board. As you can see, the boat appears to have been completely engulfed in flames. Police say everyone made it safely ashore without any life-threatening injuries. No word yet on what caused the fire or how all the people on board got back to shore, and we'll give you updates on that as we get them. And this Fox weather alert as millions of people are bracing for another far-reaching storm expected to bring more ice and snow and frigid temperatures. This latest blast of winter comes just days after another storm sent cars and trucks spinning off of highways and closed 2 interstates. There were so many accidents in Tennessee, the National Guard was called out with Humvees and a wrecker to clear a 12-mile stretch of highway. Now they're preparing for round 2, but parts of the Midwest and the East Coast better be on alert as well. So let's go to meteorologist Adam Klotz in the Fox Extreme Weather Center to find out just how bad this is going to be, Adam.
Hey there, Rick. We're already beginning to see some of that weather you're talking about. Now, the temperatures are in place. You're looking at cold numbers across the eastern half of the country, but even settling fairly far south. 30 degrees currently in Memphis. We've got some moisture heading that way, and that is causing some slippery conditions already. You see this snowstorm falling. We've seen watches and warnings already stretching down farther to the south, but now running through Memphis in a larger area, moving into Chicago, moving into Indiana, all areas that are beginning to battle some of these snowy conditions. With all of this, we've got a large area with winter storm advisories stretching down from portions of Texas where you're more likely to see some ice, but then running up to the north where widespread snow is going to run from the Ohio River Valley, stretching all the way back towards Kansas City. That's what we're seeing currently, and it's all coming with another round of very cold air. It's right along this frontal boundary. Pay attention to where the snow is and then look back behind it because the numbers drop quickly. This is a true Arctic blast. Suddenly, you're falling down into the negatives once again with wind chills getting down to negative 10 to negative 12 degrees. That's as you head towards tomorrow. So this is going to be a real Arctic blast that's going to shoot all the way to into the Midwest, making high temperatures down only into single digits. So your forecasted highs for tomorrow, you see where it begins to settle in. Plenty of cold spots there in the northern plains. I take you into Tuesday. Rick, you see this? It is widespread once again. It has been very cold. It's going to continue to be very cold here for the next couple of days.
Well, that's too bad.
Yes,
Adam Klotz,
yes, it is.
Thanks for the bad news.
Yep.
From a prison cell to the Senate, that's where Chelsea Manning hopes to be this time next year. The former Army private responsible for the largest leak of classified U.S. documents has launched a campaign for Senate. Plus, new video of a getaway in a high-stakes hotel heist in the City of Lights. The latest in the search for two robbers still on the loose in Paris.
Bangles down upon the bevy of high brown from down the levee, all bits, putting on the wrist.